Welcome, everybody, to After Dark, the Sunday show. And this is, June 9th. And of course, it is a Sunday. And you got a YouTube channel, don't you?
I do. Godless engineer. Over there, I haven't been putting out too much original content lately. It's mainly been clips, but I mean, I produce videos on occasion.
All right. I got a channel too, there you go. All right. So we're doing call-ins today. This is the first time we've done a show together, I think, in like a minute. Right?
Yeah. I remember way long ago. I actually asked you to be on my channel for a Darwin Day episode where we just sort of had a quick conversation. And I think that maybe that might have been the last time solo that I've had you on or I've been on with you. So it's great to be back on with you.
Where do we have the phone number listed for people to call in? I thought I had that on screen. Do you have it up?
Yeah, well, on our view right now, it's at the very bottom, 720-619-2288.
Very good. There it is. All right, well then, call that, and if you want to tell us why either of us is wrong. Because I certainly get that in comments, like, all day, every day. I get everybody telling me that they're not really good at telling me why, but they're really good at just telling me I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, totally. Typically the kind of comments I get are just like, "Oh, you're wrong about this." And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, people just don't even mention like why you're wrong. They just want to call you an idiot and potentially make you feel like shit. So, that's the kind of person they are.
One that I like is when they tell me that you're pretty good in science, but your politics are all wrong. So I challenge, because that's all you're going to tell me is when my politics are wrong. What's wrong with my politics? And the answer is, when I get one, because it's rare. Usually I don't get an answer at all. But if I get one at all, it's some bogus assumption of something I've never even said. Well, you're a communist. No. When did I ever say I was a communist?
Yeah. So recently I got one on the political topic. I got one asking me why I simp so hard for Joe Biden. And I believe I described it as I'm being forced to pick between two piles of shit, and I'm just trying to pick the less nuttier one. Like, I don't want nuts in my shit.
Yeah, I look at it this way. I'm looking at the former cabinet under Trump is now entirely peopled with convicted felons, every one of them. And these are the representatives of the Law and Order Party.
It's supposedly law and order. I don't know what they think is law and order, but
yeah, exactly. I mean, the way what tell you what frightens me is have you heard of Project 2025?
Yes, it is. It is a frightening look into the. I guess is it far right or just right at this point? Like, I can't really tell.
Well, it's the conservative right. I guess we could fairly say that it's far right, because they want to. While they haven't explicitly said that they want to turn it into a Christian nation, the heads of that group also belong to fundamentalist Christian groups like Christian Dominionist groups and so on, who want to Christianize America. So it's kind of like when you look at the Republican Party platform on the national level, that's kind of sanitized. But if you look at the Texas-specific version of the Republican Party platform, that's where you see the insanity. That's where they say the quiet stuff out loud. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, did you hear about the Washington GOP, like the organization in Washington State?
No.
So they had a meeting recently where they basically just flat out came out and said that their position is anti-democracy and that they want to replace any references to democracy or democratic with Republican and republicanism. And so they're the Washington State GOP is just blatantly coming out and being like, we don't like having a democracy at all, like any kind of democracy. And I don't know if they are convoluting like what a Democrat is with the idea of democracy, or what. You would think that somebody in politics would understand the differences, but at this point, I feel like that's expecting too much out of the Republicans.
And before any like blows up in the comments in the chat or anything, I understand that we are not a democracy. We are a republic. We're a constitutional republic. We are a democratic, representative, constitutional republic. And when they want to take out the democracy, they're not saying that we are a pure democracy. They're taking out the "we the people" part.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to go to authoritarianism. They don't want this to be "we the people." You ain't shit. As George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. So they want to put this in the old boy network, where the corporate oligarchs and the big money and the corporate interests and all of that run this country, not the courts, not the people, not the elected representatives. When they say they want to get rid of democracy, that's what they're talking about. So this is what I'm having to vote for. I'm having to vote for somebody that, as I will be fair, he has not disappointed me as much as I thought he would, as fast as I thought he would. There is this one issue with Gaza and all of that. That, I mean, there've been enough hints dropped, dude. If you have a religious stance, you're going to have to change that religious stance, which I know he can do. He has done it. And we also know that if it was Trump that was in charge, we'd be absolutely balls deep in defense of Israel for everything, right? What is the Republican Party's platform on defense of Israel? Absolutely,
just
without limit.
Absolute, absolute support.
And if Trump had been in power, Putin would have rolled over Ukraine. We would have the reestablishment of the old Soviet Union is what we would have. All of the original borders.
I think it's funny that Trump, like on his all of his speeches, he's like, "Yeah, Putin wouldn't have invaded Ukraine if I was president," because apparently they have some kind of secret like pinky swear between the both of them, like, "Don't do this if I'm president, okay? Just wait till maybe I get kicked out of office or something, then you got to invade. But right now we're just gonna pinky swear with our dicks or something."
Well, my problem with that is that when Putin met with Trump, they had to meet in a secret room where everybody's under an NDA, and it's all under extreme penalties if anybody talks. So we have these two where nobody is allowed to know anything that was said.
Yeah,
I distrust that. I want transparency. I want to know what is said. I'm just funny that way. But,
I mean, yeah, I totally do too. But see, the thing is that his base during that entire the entire debacle with Ukraine, his entire base was like, "All you gotta do is read the transcripts. It totally exonerates the president." It's like, "Oh, well, have you read the transcripts?" "No, but Trump told me that it exonerates him, so I believe him." And it's like,
yeah. And let me see. We have any callers here? We do have two. We have atheist. Well, we don't have any theists coming on, but I'll be happy to bring in an atheist to talk with us. And I'm just going to go in sequential order. If you're good with that, are you good with that?
Oh yeah, I'm good with that.
All right. And first of all, we have Alan in. I'm guessing this is Louisiana. Alan, would you like to explain what you'd like to talk about today? Can you? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have also, how are y'all doing, Aaron and John? Good to talk to y'all. I have a friend who has started going down a really conspiratorial, homophobic, transphobic rabbit hole, and he's started a YouTube channel and stuff that's spewing all of this. And basically, what I want to know is, first of all, is it even worth it to try to preserve that friendship, or and if so, how do I approach that? How do I say, hey, you're being a dick, without myself being a dick?
Yeah, there's a fine line, isn't it? And you're asking the wrong guy, because I chose to do that. I've lost so many family and friends, long time, close family and friends, who have just decided that the most marginal people, the most vulnerable people, need to be picked on more. And if I could speak to one thing about this is not my topic. I don't know hardly anything about trans issues and genderqueer. I'm one of the rare people that are so far into cisgendered heterosexuality and being completely comfortable in my skin. I wish everybody else could be as comfortable in their own skin as I am, but I understand that there are people who don't have the bodies they want, and they have this kind of this dysphoria that I can't directly relate to, but that doesn't mean that I get to negate them for not being able to relate to that. And one of the arguments that I frequently see, which bothers me, is when people demand that trans people have to come up with some kind of medical justification to show that what they're feeling is medically confirmed to be real. Now, my problem with that is, while I think they can do that, do they have to? Because I thought that we lived in a country that offered life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I thought people had a right to that. And so nobody has to prove to me what your identity is. That's your deal, not mine. And the only thing I want to do is not be part of the problem.
And how I generally approach conversations with people that are my friends, typically, that I want to have these kinds of conversations with, where I feel like what they're saying is dickish, but I still feel like they're not trying to be a dick. They're not trying to be that asshole. I try to approach them as if they're just ignorant of a better way to do things. And so I do try to I try to weave an argument that's not so in your face, and I take a lot of cues from a lot of the street epistemologists. Do you watch any street epistemology videos?
Yes, actually, and I was kind of in preparation for this potential confrontation. I was brushing up on that sort of those techniques, because I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really looking to have good conversations where you have a good chance of at least planting a seed in someone's mind, or maybe even changing it, I think that really studying how Magna Bosco, Anthony Magna Bosco, his channel, that's the first one that comes to mind as far as street epistemology goes, but there's a whole host of channels out there that practice this. But studying how he approaches topics and subjects, pretty much just trying to get them to think about issues or things in their own, or outside of their own shoes. So trying to get them to realize, well, if we're talking about LGBTQ issues, be like, well, what if somebody persecuted you for, being straight, or any host of topics that you might be talking about, just attempting to get them to see it from the other person's side of it, I think is probably the best way that you can do it. And I mean, I feel like if you do that, then maybe they'll realize at some point, oh my God, am I the asshole? Like, I feel like
Right.
at some point you gotta be like, oh, I'm the, because I know there's been things that I've either said or did in the past, and now that I look back on it, I'm like, oh my god, I was the like bad kind of asshole here, kind of thing.
Right.
And so I think that approaching it that way can help preserve a friendship, but also get them to see it from a different perspective.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm afraid that neither of us are probably going to be expertise on this. As I said,
Well, it's not like the I just brought up the like homophobia and transphobia just kind of as examples. In general, I mean, this is all due to his religious beliefs, because he's all of a sudden gone, super Christian and like super into the supernatural and demons control everything, like unironically kind of thing.
Yeah. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of an issue there. Can you, is there a way that you can give us maybe an example of like something homophobic that he said, or maybe some kind of homophobic argument that he's made?
So he himself is not like actually articulating the arguments. He's mostly just sharing stuff that other people have said, right? So he has this YouTube channel where he's talked about like what's his name, Andrew Tate said about homosexuality or whatever, or what Jordan Peterson said, or all these clear homophobes, for example. And then just
all the smooth-brained individuals. Sorry, all the smooth-brained individuals. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
I said yesterday to somebody, I said one of the greatest things about that, probably one of the greatest things about the Joe Rogan show is that you have a moment where you get to listen to, you get to get into the mind of people that really shouldn't have a public platform at all. And you don't really realize how much they shouldn't have one until they're on the Joe Rogan show, and you realize, oh, fuck. Yeah.
Yeah. So the only thing that he really adds is just his commentary on how like this is biblical and this is, they always quote that like principalities, Bible verse, whatever that one is.
I believe it says fighting against the powers and principalities. I believe that's in Paul's letters, where he talks about that, and it's definitely talking about fighting demons and Satan and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and just isn't any. The sad thing is, there's no truth to any of that. I mean, not a bit of it.
Right.
You may as well be talking to somebody that's playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons and doesn't realize that there's a physical world outside that board. That's
what it feels like, because I mean, just the stuff that he posts is absolutely ridiculous. Or at least, yeah. I don't know if it's. I don't know how it doesn't seem ridiculous to him, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, there is no supernatural. We don't have souls. We know that. Right. I've talked to a whole bunch of different neuroscientists on this, of neurophilosophers, Patricia Churchland, Daniel Dennett. I've interviewed a whole bunch of people like this, and they all come to the same conclusion because they're all working with the same evidence. It's not just that there is no evidence of a soul precisely where it actually would be if such a thing existed. It's not just that the evidence is missing where we would have found it if it was real. It's that we also have so much evidence against it, enough to say that there is no soul. And the biggest argument that the God believers and such have is that, well, you can't prove there's no God. I don't need to. When there's no soul, what's the point of God?
Well, and to emphasize something that Aron says on occasion is, and correct me if I'm wrong about the phrasing of this, Aron, but if you can't show it, then you don't know it, right? So I think keeping that in mind, is that what you say, Aron? I feel like I've heard you. Okay. I've what I typically would try to keep in mind is trying to get them to realize what is the evidence for this information, and how do you actually know that these demons or devils or whatever are real, for one, and that they are enemies of your particular God. So like getting at the heart of where the evidence lies for it. But I think that somebody that's like, this is all biblical, we're fighting against demons, I feel like that is an epic level of like ignorance to try to drill through. And depending on their age, just because of what generation that would put them in, I feel like you could have sort of a tough time like reaching them.
And I just try to reach out to people to say, okay, you want to find these interpretations, these artfully interpreted passages where you can read prophecy into things kind of after the fact that the author obviously didn't mean at the time that he wrote it. And we're just going to ignore that snakes don't talk. We're going to ignore that we know that there was no global flood. There was no Tower of Babel. Adam and Eve are absolutely just a fable with a moral. That they're adapted metaphorical folklore. There's no truth to that story whatsoever. No literal truth. The only possible truth you can interpret out of that is metaphorical, and that's it. There was no tree of knowledge of good and evil. There's no tree of eternal life. They weren't trees. These are everywhere that the Bible uses, the fruit of. It's talking about the results of actions taken or choices made. They're completely metaphorical. This is a fable. This isn't real. And we know, like they're building the Tower of Babel to reach the heavens. What was God's motive there? He didn't want us to be able to achieve things when we work together, because God is the ultimate dick. So according to this fable, he confused our language so that we couldn't accomplish anything. Where's the justification in that? Where's the fatherly love in that? That character is an asshole, and it is a character. We know that multiple languages have existed all over the world long before Hammurabi started the Marduk ziggurat, which is what the Tower of Babel is based on. There's no significant truth to that whatsoever. Yes, there was a river called Euphrates. Yes, there's a country called Ethiopia. Some of the people and place names are legitimately real. That doesn't mean that any of the stories that happened in that book happened as described. None of them. And we know in several cases they definitely didn't. There was no global flood of Noah's Ark. That's absolute fact. And I'd say absolute. We know that one for absolutely certain. And also with Adam and Eve, again, absolutely certain that we know there was no Adam and Eve. And when you take away all the foundations of the Bible, and these guys are still looking for some poetic interpretation. Well, if you use this one, only in the King James Version, if you read this one passage, only part of the verse, not the whole verse, but only part of the verse is prophetic, because in this translation, it says they pierced his hands and feet. These hunting dogs pierced his hands and feet. They pierced his hands and feet like lions. And that is prophecy of Jesus. But in this other linguistic translation, it doesn't say it that way. And so it's not a prophecy. And it was only part of the sentence anyway. The fuck is wrong with these people? I don't understand where the mindset is that you've got to make believe something that you know is not true. Why doesn't it matter what the truth actually is? Because all these people want to tell me that, well, you'll never change my mind and I'll never change yours. Well, actually, if you were right, you could change my mind. You really could. I am right, and I can't change your mind because you don't care what the truth is. That's the problem.
Right.
Alan did. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. have we answered your question thoroughly?
Yes, definitely. I'll definitely look more into the street epistemology and try to use those tactics, and see if we can shake some knowledge into him. I'm also definitely using that God is the ultimate dick. 8 = D.
Yep.
Yeah. Good luck with that. That's unfortunately the problem that I have. Is I can't. I have so many people that I know, people that I cared about, that I was close to, would tell me that they've never cracked open a Bible. They don't care what it says. They don't know what a creed is. But they're better than me because they're Christian. And they don't even know what that means. You're on your 4th felony conviction in your 4th marriage as a drug-addicted, alcoholic fornicator, but you're better than me because you wear a cross. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
All right,
I'm going to let you go.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Good talking to you,
that was
sir.
really helpful.
Yep. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
All
I
right.
hope you call again
I'll
in
call
the
her.
future.
All right.
All right. Now, next up, we have Benjamin in Arizona.
I'm so sorry you
Benjamin,
live in
do you-
Arizona.
I like Arizona.
I just don't. I don't like the politicians in Arizona.
I'll tell you what I liked. When I lived in Arizona, I was born in Arizona, in fact. There was a time when I lived in Arizona where I lived all over. I just lived all over the state, especially all along Highway 70. We moved a lot. But there were a lot of places, there were a lot of times when when not everybody I knew had a car, but everybody had a motorcycle. So and there's great riding in Arizona. So, Benjamin, you there? You hear us? I guess not.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't hear Benjamin. Maybe he set down the phone and walked away.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm so
Let's just
sorry.
talk
Can you
about
hear
it.
me?
Yes. We were just about
Sorry,
to
I
start
had my
talking
phone on
about
mute.
you.
I can indeed confirm that Arizona is full of very wonderful motorcycles and just cruising Route 66 vehicles in general.
Yep. There's a lot of good riding in Arizona. In one day, you can go from the Wile E. Coyote kind of desert setting to the alpine forests, to the Great Plains with pronghorns, to the Grand Canyon, to Meteor Crater. There's just like, it's spectacular stuff. Go out to Bisbee. There's great riding.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I had a question in regards to you would suppose say moderate believers, people who don't really spend a lot of time going through scripture or anything like that. How would you have conversations with them? And this is similar to the last caller too, in that just wanted to know how to maintain good relationships with the people you care about in your life, and some such like that.
This is such a common theme of late. Mm-hmm. One that I've never heard. I mean, I can tell you, I can go back to the 90s. We didn't have this kind of division with family or friends. You know, we knew which ones were the gun nuts, you know, and that sort of thing. But it was just, it wasn't this blatant. It wasn't this. There wasn't this huge division where suddenly they're hating each other over a label very often. So and this is one of the reasons I'm trying to avoid labels, because people have their own definitions for it. If I use label X, it's my understanding of what label X means, but somebody else has a completely different understanding. They don't care they don't care why I identify as this, because they have their own wrong definition they're going to use instead. So I have to explain what my policy is, and then nobody knows how to categorize that. So they just want to put people in boxes. There can't be any nuance. There can't be any extenuating circumstances. You're either this or you're that. It's got to be completely binary. And they want to know who they're opposed to.
Yeah,
I fully understand the mindset. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, when I was growing up, which includes the 90s, I was more of a kid during the 90s, so maybe I just didn't notice things. But I grew up in a very religious area, and it was never really brought up, like the whole idea of godlessness or anything like that. At least not to the level that I was like, oh, I don't want to be godless. But typically, nobody, like outside of like actual like politics that were being discussed, we didn't have really any disagreements like theologically or anything like that, or nobody was like, throwing other people out of the family because they weren't Catholic. In my situation, it's Catholicism, because my dad's part of the family's Catholic. Well, my mom's family, they were Catholic and then they left the Catholic Church. Well, my mom did, at least. And so there was no like division in that kind of way or anything like that. There was no real care as to what specifically your theology was or how that works into your political opinions. So, I mean, I definitely think that this is a more modern development, those kinds of things. But I'll just reiterate. Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, just because you're both saying you think it's a more modern issue, what do you think would be the source or potential cause of that?
Well, I think that there's been a lot of, sorry to cut in here, Aron, just in my own opinion, I think that a lot of it has to do with the religious right. They were a small segment of the right. But then they started really organizing and really pushing a lot of religious agendas, but repackaged into more political agendas. And they started working their fungus. Yes, I don't know how fast foot fungus spreads, but I think that it slowly worked its way into the right-wing politics, and then it just took the right mixture in order to just start like a whole wildfire of it. And I don't think that it started with Trump. I just think that Trump really took hold of what he could see in that community and how he could manipulate it, with just very basic lies, and then he just sort of ran with it. That's what I think he did. It was, even before that, with the grassroots Tea Party. I don't know if you remember all the Tea Party stuff that was going on, but I think that's the first thing that I can recall as far as like an organized religiously minded sort of political movement that really kind of started changing how the rank and file Republicans started to consider issues. Because I'll just give you a really good example. It's abortion. Prior to like the Moral Majority, which is a group that is disbanded now, but they started wanting to push more religion into politics. And so what they did was they made abortion a political issue. Prior to them doing that, it just simply was not like a religious issue like abortion. And that's why nobody had a problem except for these religious right people with like the decision of Roe v. Wade. It was only when Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority made it a political position that people started having a problem with it. And so that's just one particular issue. But as you can tell now, it's bloomed into several other issues. I mean, right now, I believe the right is really fighting internally between each other over IVF. And contraception. There's so many in the right side of politics in the United States that are for contraception and IVF, and then of course the maggot brigade. They are all like against. Oh well, I don't know. Trump's for IVF and probably contraception with how many fidelities he's had or infidelities he's had. But there's
I wonder how many abortions he's paid for.
Yeah, that's a number that we'll probably never know, but we can speculate about.
It's greater than zero. I would almost guarantee that.
But there's so many on the right side that are just fighting with each other about IVF and contraception. I think it's only a matter of time before that actually becomes the mainstream sort of right wing point to be against IVF and contraception. And so I mean, these are just a few common examples of how religion has merged its way into politics. Sorry, I know I kind of took over there for a second.
Oh, no worries. You did well. And you were the best one to open that up. I mean, what I see and what has always bothered me is I've always reacted to reactionaries, if that makes any sense, people that I've always seen since I was a little kid as being offended by everything. Every new concept is somehow offensive. Well, that's not, that we're going to do it the way my granddaddy done because that's the way we always done it, and I ain't going to change nothing. And the very, very simplistic thought of people who don't seem to understand things. You've noticed that everybody that buys into a conspiracy theory, whether it's flat Earth or geocentrism or moon landing denial or whatever it is, it's always coming from people who make clear, whether they realize they've made it clear or not, they don't really have a lot of understanding, but they feel smarter when they can pretend as if they're questioning the authorities, when really they're just denying reality and they don't understand that. I see people having too simplistic a view where everything is, as I mentioned before, it's always in a binary spectrum. There's no consideration of extenuating circumstances, no nuance, and there's no consideration of other people's rights. There's always a fear that they're losing. What about my rights? What about my privilege? And there's nothing about what about their rights? And is this fair to everybody? And I see that as being one of the biggest issues. Do you have compassion that everything should be fair for everybody? And if you had absolute dictatorial power, you've got the entire country by the throat, and you can rule like an absolute dictator with an iron fist and govern everybody, and you've got no fear of retaliation. If you had such power, if I had such power, my primary concern would be that your mother can still get her prescriptions and that you can still live your fulfilling life, that you can still go about your day and enjoy your existence, and that everybody can. That everybody can just live peacefully and that they have some degree of protection under the law, national defense, of course, and just the minimum peacekeeping and protections so that we have a happy society where everybody can just live. And there are certain people that think that this is the big thing that bothers me when they think about, I got to be considerate of somebody else. Hell no. If there's somebody that's slightest bit different than me, then I have to react against them. So to summarize, what I'm talking about here is somehow wokeism is not just a bad thing, it's the worst thing you can possibly be. It's the worst thing the country could have. And so far as I can understand, being woke means no more than being aware that there are certain demographics of the population who probably deal with more systemic issues than I, as a cisgendered, white, heterosexual, good-looking, I'll say good-looking because I remember when I was young, that I had certain privileges, right? And so I skated by in my 20s. I had it easy, and I realized that. And I realized a whole lot of other people don't. And I can see all of the cascading, overlapping reasons why other people didn't have shit as easy as me. But if I'm going to ask someone else, it's easy for me to be considerate of somebody else's problems. But if I'm going to ask for any legislative body to be considerate of somebody else's problems, somebody's going to reject. And the very people who seem to be all against the very notion of survival of the fittest, which is, by the way, an economic claim that was used in a class war. That's not Darwin. That's Herbert Spencer arguing classism, where he thought that the rich were better than the poor. Right? The very people who would dis-evolutionary a theory also cling to, without realizing it, the survival of the fittest thing that was presented by Herbert Spencer, where they think they're better than everybody else. Fuck all you. I got mine. Fuck all the rest of y'all. That seems to be the perspective. And that's what I find most disturbing. When there is a group of people, when you realize that somebody is poor and black and gay and female, they probably have more issues than I did growing up. I'm going to guess,
Right.
system-wide. I think that's a fair estimate. being woke means no more than being aware that there is this systemic social problem and maybe not wanting to contribute to any more of it. But when people think that the absolute worst thing you can be is compassionate about another person's problems, that's the worst thing? How's that even a bad thing? I'm confused.
Right. Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything you've said. I just definitely want to have these kind of productive conversations with those close to me. My wife specifically is, like I said, more like a moderate Christian who doesn't, adhere to many of the things that would be considered doctrinal or that most people would consider blasphemous if someone did, like I said, IDF or the contraceptive, all that kind of stuff. The other question that I had in addition was kind of leaning on the other side. If you have someone who is claiming that they're a theist and they believe in God, but then when shown the qualities of the God that they're talking about, and it doesn't really adhere to what they're talking about in their minds, like how would you go about that?
Well, so I was just gonna reiterate something I said before, and that's that I think the street epistemology kind of way is the best way to go about having these kinds of conversations. And what street epistemology really relies on is asking questions and juxtaposing a person's belief against a belief not of their own, and then getting them to denote what differentiates both of the ideas. So like you have a moderate Christian, I believe is what you said your fiance is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So like what pick one topic that you disagree with her on other than the whole God issue.
That's the thing is I have a hard time thinking of one.
Okay, so it's primarily just God. Like, does that get into like other areas of things? Like various people use God to justify being homophobic, for example, or any number of different issues.
Right, and that's more what I mean is she hasn't ever given any kind of justification for anything like that, and has always seen those kind of things as very bad as they should be. I've never had that come up as an issue. So
well,
I
right.
like I said, I think it comes to a majority of people who say that they believe are claiming that they believe in something that they've never as has been said, never read about or don't really understand the qualities that are given to it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I understand. So one time I got visited by a couple of Mormons, and I actually got them to come back 3 different times to have like at least an hour-long conversation with me each time, because they just couldn't penetrate, I guess, my thought process on religion, especially their crazy ass space Jesus. But when the tactic that I took with them was basically the whole juxtaposing their faith against other people's faith. Because a lot of times you'll have Christians that are like, well, I know God is real because of either personal experience or, some kind of bad reason that they pulled from the Bible, that they know it or something like that. First of all, getting them to really concretely define what convinces them can really help either them or you in the conversation. So doing that is probably the first step. But then after that, what I would do, and what I did in my conversation with the Mormons was I asked them a simple question, like, okay, you say that this personal experience that you had with God, or this feeling that you get from God, or anything of that sort, how Muslims, they also feel this, and you can pick any other religion where they have these kinds of reactions to their particular deity. They have those exact same feelings about their God, and those exact same reasons are what inform them that their God is real. So how do you know that they are wrong about their intuitions about God, but you are right? What's the deciding factor there? And really honing in on asking them those kinds of questions, like how do you know that this God is real and theirs isn't? Or how do you know God actually did this, but it wasn't the devil? Like, how do you make sure that it was actually God and not the devil? And that kind of stuff. Like, getting them to really try to differentiate between the two and think about, how they would know, I feel is probably the best way to have these kinds of conversations without, I guess, causing a rift or causing problems. Asking those kinds of questions. Now, that doesn't mean that they may not get mad at the questions that you ask, because anger and lashing out and everything like that are masks for other emotions, like especially when you're challenging some preconceived notion that they have. If you're challenging these deep-seated beliefs and everything like that, it may come out as anger. But at that point, it's really important for you not to respond in anger, but just realize that anger is a mask for these other emotions of being vulnerable and having things questioned that you don't necessarily have an answer for. Losing control of something is another way that anger manifests. Like if they don't feel like, they're in control of the conversation or something like that, that could elicit an angry reaction. But again, I would just say, and I'm speaking from my own therapy at this point, what my therapist taught me about my own anger issues that I've had in the past is that anger is a mask for other emotions. And just if you keep that in mind, if your questions or conversations make your loved one angry, then that most likely it's a mask for another emotion that they're feeling. And so getting at the heart of that emotion as to why something makes them angry is also a good conversation to have, because then they can really deal with the real reason for their anger, instead of just either placating their anger or getting angry back at them and causing a further issue. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts on how to have more productive conversations with loved ones without having it break down the relationship.
Well, I deeply appreciate your gentleman's time, and I don't want to take too much time over the line. I know you guys probably have other callers waiting. I'm just trying to think if I, got all my yucks out. I'm so sorry. This is my first call on something like this, and I'm not really prepared. I just kind of wing this. But it really is a interesting conversation, being able to talk to two very obvious, like I said, fonts of information. I just would say that one of the higher qualities that you'd want to aspire in, conversations like that, like you said, is to find a place of mutual understanding and general kinship. And I can definitely concur that people on the older parts of the right wing are slightly different than like even just my generation, because I'll say I'm in my late 20s, and around that generation, people in that generation, I've noticed a stark difference between the two.
All right.
Totally.
Well, thank you very much, Benjamin. We will go ahead and pick up another call. It was good talking to you. Thank you for bringing up some interesting discussion.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Ozzy in New York.
Yo.
Ozzy, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep. So, what is the topic you want to discuss today?
The insanity of this religion stuff.
This religion stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a conversation with my mother. Well, not really a conversation. It was just like a critique. I was at her house. And she was, I was telling her stuff that happened to me, and prior, in the week, and she said, "Yeah, you know what's going on? You don't have God. You don't believe in God. So, your problem is that you're atheist. You don't believe in God, and that's why all these bad things keep happening to you." And I was like, "What?"
Well, so if I can, my immediate reaction to that, if someone were to tell me, is I would just be like, "Are you saying that bad things don't happen to Christians?" Because I feel like bad things definitely happen to Christians out there. Like Christians, experience negative things all the time. So it's like, how is God making his decision to fuck somebody up?
Yeah. Whereas my life has been relatively blessed, if I would use that word. I mean, I had things so easy for most of my, even though I was blaspheming all over the place, and shit just happened to go well for me, just by luck of the draw.
Yeah, I bought my house that I'm living in right now right before like housing started to get really obscene, like right at the end of the pandemic time frame. So I guess God was looking favorably upon my atheistic ass.
Yeah. And things I've noticed, and I think maybe a lot of this is just attitude. Maybe it's privilege. Maybe it's just an advantage of genetics and other factors. But things just happen to work out for me, and in such a way that I really appreciated whatever my situation was. I've never been rich. I'm always behind on my bills. I always need a little bit more financial support, whatever. But even when things were at their worst in my life, I could still appreciate the way things are. I could still appreciate what I had, and I would also, I didn't compare myself to people who had more better than me. I would never have to look far to see all the people had shit a whole lot worse than me. There's just a fuck ton of those people. And so I spent my entire life feeling fortunate that I wasn't in all of their shoes. And almost all of these other people who had shit just always going bad for them. I mean, and these are people, again, that are not just strangers, but people I know in my personal life, people in my family or whatever. I'm like, can you not catch a break? How much bad shit has to happen to you all the fucking time? And everything just happens nice for me. And this wasn't just when I was compassionate, because when I was a young man, I was an absolute ass. It took me a while. You never realize that you're the bad guy when you're the bad guy. Bad guys always think they're the good guy. Funny thing.
No, I know I'm a bad guy.
Yeah.
I know
it took me a while
to
realize that throughout a lot of my youth, I was a bad guy, and I just took advantage of people. And I lament that. But shit always went well for me. And always, and there's some people that I know that just, they never had a good fucking day. Everything went wrong for them. They're diehard Christians. They believe in Jesus, all of that shit. And just everything goes wrong in their life forever. And they live terribly. They don't deserve it. What's the justification there?
Joel Osteen, I would say, is a good example of that.
Ah.
Yeah, she likes him.
Of course.
I'm sorry. She likes that liar smile that he's got.
Yeah. And you
gotta make sure that
my brother, he became like the born again Christian thing, and then got her into it, because before that she was cool people. She was a Catholic, and she did the Catholic, the schedule with the Christmas and Easter. That was the only time they did the church. And now it's like every day, every other day they go to church, waste money, and it's always a thing with the church. And it, like he ends up getting a nice, decent job and getting everything worked out. He's got a nice house and everything. I'm the other side. I'm the the junkie, the one that messed up, the one that I messed up basically. So she's saying that basically that because I'm atheist is why I'm a mess up. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, in that particular respect, I again would point to the fact that even Christians exist in like those kinds of situations, like as far as issues with drugs and alcohol or whatever you might be struggling with. Like, there's no category out there. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm not struggling with anything.
Okay.
I'm just
I was
now
just
like. I'm older now, so like things is getting tougher now. And things getting expensive, and the world is getting crazy. So my brother's better off. I'm not. And she's saying that I don't know.
Well, I mean, again, like I was saying, there's no one category really that Christians don't also like. I guess suffer in, I guess is the best way to put it. Like it's not like, praying magical incantations to some genocidal bloodthirsty god in the sky is making, either your brother.
Call him that.
What? No. This is not something that you should say directly to a very religious family member. I'm just saying that like, saying those kinds of things is not the reason why, he's doing good, or that, the fact that you're not is the reason why you're doing bad, or whatever bad in particular looks like for you as you're characterizing it. But I definitely feel like there's a lot of confirmation bias going on here as far as on their end, because not being able to recognize that even Christians struggle either financially, socially, or whatever, they also struggle. It just shows that they're not willing to acknowledge that the issues go beyond religion, or are not really concerned with religion. Like the fact that there are Christians who are devout believers, but yet they are still, poor, destitute, hungry, however you want to classify it, shows that it's not just because you don't believe in God. It's not like you believe in God and all of a sudden all that shit's going to go away. Like going to church is not going to grant you the money you would need to, have, your own place or financial independence or anything like that. And I would point out to your brother, like, well, no, you are the one that made the decisions to get you into whatever space that you're in right now. And I feel like that is a big key, because a lot of people a lot of Christians don't want to acknowledge that they are the ones that made the correct decisions, or in any kind of case of,
credit somebody that doesn't even fit.
You still there, Ozzy?
Yeah, did we lose you?
You didn't?
Yeah, we can hear you again.
They just give the credit to somebody that doesn't even exist.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would rephrase it into a very empowering message. Like, no, a God didn't do this for you. You're the one that made the correct decisions to get there, and that kind of thing. And
I knew somebody, and I know that anecdotal examples don't mean anything when you're talking objectively, but I can't let go of some of the influence that I've seen where this woman gets divorced. She's worth basically $250,000 in assets, and we're talking about round about 1990 when she gets divorced. She's got $250,000. Now, she's never been independent, but here's her situation. And she gets a boyfriend who ends up taking heavy advantage of her. she starts losing her money for all these bad investments that she's being talked into making, which really she's just funding his interests, until she runs completely out of money, and she's renting a half-length single-wide trailer that she doesn't even own and can't make the payments on 1 year later. She's absolutely destitute, lost everything, and the boyfriend who misguided her and all of that. And the more desperate she becomes, and this is the important part of the story, the more desperate she becomes, the more money she starts pumping into tithing because she thinks she's paying for blessings. So the more desperate she gets, the poorer she gets, the more of her money she gives away to the richest church on the planet, because she thinks she's going to get blessings. And what's a blessing? A magical enchantment. Yeah. Until her family comes in, has to bail her out, and then she ends up having to live in a rented room in one of her family members' houses.
Damn.
Yeah. Because her God failed her.
Religious. And she's religious, and that's what kills me. You know what I'm saying? Like, why?
Well, are you asking like why does she believe? Is that what you're asking?
Just like why? Like why? Like why is it so important for people to have it's like an extra thing. Like now I'm Jewish, or now I'm Muslim. Now I'm just a human. I'm just a human person. I don't need all that extra.
You know what I love about that? With all these people that started out Christian and then become Muslim, for example, they never read the Bible or the Quran. It's just a fucking costume.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And when they change one costume for another costume and all, it's basically cosplay.
Yeah.
And so now they want to credit that. I tell you, if you got a new job, if you got a new lover in your life, you got a new fucking hobby, you can change your life around from what it was. It doesn't have to be a religion. It doesn't have to be a different identity. But these people want it to be a different identity.
I used to be like a junkie. I used to be, fucked up on cocaine and fucking around and all this shit. Then I found dogs, right? And then dogs opened me up to a whole different world of living. You know what I'm saying? Dogs are great. You know what I'm saying? They ended up straightening me out. You know what I'm saying? I don't drink no more. I don't do coke no more. I may smoke a joint once in a while. But, my whole life has changed because of the dog, not because of God. You know what I'm saying? There was no God. There's nothing there. Dogs are there. Dogs are real. Dogs, I don't know. I don't know.
No, so I totally agree with this sentiment here, because and this harkens to the whole religious experience thing. These are literally just chemicals that are going on in your head, right? So you can get the same kind of like religious empowerment that religious people get from something like, dogs, or having a profound spiritual or religious sort of experience at a concert that doesn't have anything to fucking do with God. They're just eliciting these chemical reactions in your brain that make you feel a certain way.
Exactly.
And so I personally think that a lot of what's going on, at least in the most recent history, is all in response to non-religious people being more vocal about not being there, and just the general social awareness of people that don't believe in any gods or their God in particular. Because I know in my personal experience, religion hardly ever comes up. Nobody ever asks whether or not you believe in God or anything like that. It's always automatically assumed. It's only until you say, well, I don't believe in God, does God and religion become the most fucking important thing that they could ever discuss with you. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's just this challenge to...
When we first got into the whole religion, oh my God, it was like relentless babbling about the Bible and the whole for the love of God and the blood of Christ and all this crazy talk and stuff. It made me like, oh my, what is he, why?
Yeah. I think I would have probably a lot of fun with that because I would love to challenge. Okay, so especially if they don't accept evolution anymore, because let's just have a conversation where I show you. We'll just take turns. I'll show you truths about evolution, and you struggle to show me anything true at all about your faith.
That's the whole thing. Like they everything is because of God. Evolution because of God. Big Bang because of God. Everything is because of God. Everything.
Well, so I'll share.
If God is responsible for everything, then that means he made the devil, right? So why did he create the devil? Why did he create pedophiles? Like I'm a father. I wouldn't want to, put my daughter in a room with a pedophile. Why was God putting pedophiles in the room with all of us?
Well, interestingly enough, how fucked up some religious sentiment is that they would rather put their daughter in a room with a pedophile than in a room with an atheist. I believe that was a poll that was released somewhere. I remember seeing that at one point. It was kind of striking to me. But since we're going along the anecdotal story route, I one time had my dad call me. One thing that both me and my dad share is that we're both type 1 diabetics, and he had a really low sugar one time, and he said that he couldn't remember driving home because of his low sugar. Like he just didn't remember how he got there, and it was only by the grace of God that he did. And so the fact that he did get home proved to him that God does exist, and so he had this whole profound thing where he wanted to talk to me about it because he knew I didn't believe. And I just sat there and I just calmly talked to him, and I was like, hey, there's a lot of things about the human mind that we just don't know, and there's a lot of situations where your short-term memory doesn't get transformed into long-term memory, so you just made it home on your own, and then that short-term memory didn't get turned into long-term. Of course, he totally rejected that and said, well, it's because of God that I got home. But the fact is that I was saying something that was reasonable and logical and more likely than magic that was important, because I wasn't being a dick about it or anything. I was just like, well, look, this is how I see it. This is what I think about it. I'm glad that you made it home safely, however you got home. And, we just kind of left it at that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say that we had a theist in the call queue. I was about to jump to that call, and then the theist is gone.
They may call back in. Their line might have gotten dropped or something like that. So, hopefully, I've had that happen before. They'll just call back in. So hopefully that's the case.
Can I just end it by just saying one last thing? Everybody, all those guys and all the theists, they say God exists, right? The only person that doesn't say God exists is God himself.
God can't do a lot without his PR team working for him.
PR team. Powerful guy like
God
that.
Can do anything he wants. God can do anything he wants, except anything at all.
Yep,
exactly.
Except the Peter.
That'll prove it for me. If God just walked in the room right now and said, yo, I'm here, hello, I'm God, wake up, stupid, I'm God. All right, then I'll be all right. Yeah, that's a God. Okay, he just showed up, that's God. Look what he could do. All right, that's God. But there's no God showing up. There's nobody. There's nobody showing up anywhere.
Yeah. I agree.
No. All right, so we're going to let you go, Ozzy. We're going to pick up this other caller over here.
And love you guys, yo. You guys keep doing the thing. You're doing God's work. I'll tell you that right now.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, if there was a God, we wouldn't have to do his work. All right. Thank you very much, Ozzy.
Bye, Ozzy.
You. Love you.
Okay, so I hope that the theist that I was seeing in the queue does call back in, because that looked like it was going to be interesting. For the moment, why is this not? I hung up that call and it's still showing up on the call-in studio. I guess it takes a minute to drop. Yes, it does take a minute to drop. Okay. I'm going to pick up Danny. Pronouns she, her. Atheist from Pennsylvania. How do you do?
Hello, Aaron. Hello, John. I'm happy to be on
Hey.
the show. First time caller, long time listener.
Yep, it's
I love
Aron,
your beard,
please.
by the way. It looks awesome. Oh, I meant Aaron,
Well,
my
thank
bad.
you.
I love your beard, Aaron. You got awesome facial hair. I remember when I first saw one of your videos, I was like, holy shit, that guy has cool facial hair. Okay, so I know you guys really want to, Aaron kept saying that he wants the theist caller to be back. I can do a theistic argument if you want, even though I'm an atheist. But my call-in question is different from that.
Yeah.
What's that?
What I don't
There's
want.
no
I don't want
stakes, you
fake. Go ahead. What is your question?
Okay. I think the question I wrote down is: do you think we can reappropriate religion, especially like the Jesus stuff, because he's supposed to be the Prince of Peace and all that, for good? Like, do you think we could reappropriate that stuff?
Okay, is it possible to do that? Yes, it's possible to do that. I can see
It's possible.
Satanism, Druidism, Buddhism, and there was one other, Taoism. I can see all of those appropriated to be good.
Do you think there's any?
I don't.
Sorry.
I mean, you can manipulate Christianity into achieving a positive end. Christianity, the problem that I have with it is that it's fundamentally based on this. It's a death cult for damnation.
It is.
Seemingly at the core, there's either you believe impossible nonsense for no good reason just because we told you to, or we're going to torture you forever.
Yeah. I mean, it's very clear in the Bible that, like, there's stuff about, some of you will be alive when Jesus comes back. It's very obviously supposed to be, this is a death cult. I hope you guys are all ready because Jesus is coming back, and then I guess we're all going to die or whatever.
Yeah, I think he's 1,900 years late, and you're still eating the breadsticks. Your boy ain't showing up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I would say that I feel like reappropriating religion for this is still continuing this whole idea of, like, I guess, magic, because I mean, I don't like things that don't correspond to reality. And I feel like a lot of the things in religions in general require you to suspend, in some sense, this idea of that is good to correspond with reality, or that your beliefs should correspond with reality. Most religious beliefs, I feel like, have some kind of aspect of magic to them. And I feel like even if you reappropriate that and tell, quote unquote, comforting lies to people, I mean, you're still trying to get them to believe in false things about reality. Even if it's a good outcome, is it really the best way to do it? I feel like having a more reasonable worldview that is actually set in reality is probably the best way to view reality. Obviously, I'm not trying to make an argument that, religion should go away or that it should be forcefully taken from people or anything like that. But I do feel like religion at its core requires a suspension of, this idea that reality operates a certain way that doesn't include supernatural or magical occurrences. And I think that if you use magical occurrences in order to convince somebody of anything, you're effectively lying to them and telling them, well, no, the world doesn't work like science is going to tell you, or that science would reveal, rather. It actually operates in this more magical way, and that's why gay people should have rights. Like, I mean, I feel like establishing, on the basis of rationality, these, reasons why LGBTQ people are just people like, everybody else, like in the purposes for classifying people, they're just people, they deserve the same rights as everybody else and everything like that. Like, I feel like you shouldn't have to trick somebody into magical thinking to get them to treat their fellow man as just another person with the same kind of respect that you would show, any other person that hasn't, like, shit on your lawn or something. I feel like using magic to convince people is, it can only, like, it has good outcomes, but I feel like the bad outcomes are so bad that it warrants ruling it out as a good solution.
And for the,
I agree.
It depends on how you define religion, of course. I mean, I have a pretty specific definition, and I know that the U.S. government doesn't. The government allows, they don't use a definition at all. So, people will often
Atheism is technically
say,
a religion under the government definition because it's a protected thing. I believe so, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But
Justice Hugo Black said that in an obiter dictum, he said that humanism, secular humanism, and ethical culture both counted as religion because they were a body of ethics. That it wasn't necessarily a faith-based belief, but that he thought that religion was based on a body of ethics. In which case, not believing in a god is not a body of ethics. Atheism is not. Doesn't even meet Hugo Black's definition. But my
I just thought the government did.
The government doesn't have a definition, so they'll accept secular humanism. They accept Satanism. Now, Satanism does have a body of ethics to it. There's not a belief to it. None. There's no faith. There's no doctrine. No dogma. There's just like with the Satanic Temple. There's like 7 tenets, and there's a whole bunch of offshoots of the Satanic Temple now, and they all have basically the same kind of tenets of humanity. It's basically secular humanism, very similar to secular humanism. And so I can see people who want the religious community aspect could certainly turn to Satanism, especially if they're looking for something. Ironically, if they're looking for a moral community, you can actually turn to Satanism and get that. So it's one of the things that we can say, can religion be appropriated for positive ends? But then you're talking about whether something should be originally considered a religion or not. Like, was secular humanism originally considered a religion? It wasn't intended to be, but there are provisions of the Supreme Court that allow that secular humanism can be, and it's the same provisions that also allow that Satanism can be. But from my perspective. I would impose a definition. I would have said that every religion that is universally accepted as such by both its adherents and its critics is a faith-based belief system that posits the notion that the supernatural essence of self somehow survives the death of the physical body to continue on in some other form. And this, so far as I've been able to tell, this applies to every religion across the board if it's universally accepted as such by both adherents and critics. But I can see where the government would have issues with imposing any kind of definition like that.
Legality does not equate morality. What the government says is true isn't necessarily true. I was saying that I think atheism is considered a religion, but atheism is actually the lack of a religion. So they just, I don't know if it's true. I thought I saw, sorry, my phone. I thought I saw
so Satanism is atheistic. So if you're atheist and you want to join a religion, you can join Satanism. Both the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple are one of its many offshoots.
Oh, I don't really.
You can also join secular humanism, same kind of thing.
I would consider myself a secular humanist. I'm just talking like, I try to, my family members who are more religious, I'll try to convince them to be like pro-gay people, because like gay people are a marginalized group, and Jesus in the Bible always does that. Now, I know that the Bible is incredibly flawed. I've seen many things that you say about it that are incredibly flawed. I know you love bringing up the Ark, and it is completely ridiculous that anybody believes that. It condones slavery. There's plenty of bad things in the Bible. But since I'm not a Christian, I don't have to be beholden to the Bible, and I can pick the good things about Jesus and tell other people, oh yeah, you should be like Jesus. Not in the way where he's like, kind of weird and really punishy with his punishments. He really doesn't like if you don't listen to him, but in the way of being kind to people. I would like to say
is that well? Can I push back a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, is that everything that Jesus would have believed, like in the Bible? Like if you were to,
that's what I mean. I don't want. Well, I want to cherry pick it. I think.
But I mean, yeah, I feel like you can't cherry pick it. Like if you're going to say be like Jesus, I mean, Jesus reaffirms the Old Testament. He says to follow the laws of Moses and all that other kind of stuff. And there's several different religious arguments out there that, base Jesus's teachings on the Old Testament, and they teach like, who's that guy from Arizona that Steven Anderson. I mean, he's one of those quote unquote Bible believing churches. And, he teaches Jesus, and Jesus wants you to kill LGBTQ people. We're probably demonetized now, but whatever. He wants you. He wants you.
Jesus just might have been gay.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Hanging around with 12 dudes. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, and so I guess my entire point in all this is just that if you just simply tell people, well, you need to follow what Jesus says, that could always end up right back to where we are. And
I wouldn't do that. I would just say that. Oh, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, well, I had a friend that was having this issue where she was toying with her faith, twisting through it. And she decided that she was going to give up a lot of the dogma that she'd been taught to believe in her whole life, and she's just going to follow Jesus, what Jesus says in the Bible. And I said, okay, so I believe it was it Matthew 6 or is it Luke 14? I'm trying to remember, where Jesus says that you cannot be my disciple unless you hate your father and your mother and your sister and your brother and your wife and even your own life. And if you don't hate all these things, then you can't follow me. And then other things like that, I came not to bring peace, but a sword. He says in one place, turn the other cheek. And then he says another place to sell your clothes and buy swords. And that he came to separate husbands from their wives and parents from their children because he's a cult leader. Let's not forget that Jesus was a cult. So what differentiates a cult from just basic religion? You have to take your family values. You owe more to the faith than to your family. Abandon your family and dedicate to the cult.
Christianity is totally all about that.
And then Christianity is all about that, yes.
I understand that in the Bible, Jesus says a lot of messed up things, but most Christians I know have barely, if ever, read the Bible. I think the more important thing is the cultural character that surrounds him. I love Santa Claus, but I obviously don't... Go ahead. Can I make my point, or do you want to? You can say.
Yeah. No, go ahead and make your point.
It's your show. All right. I love Santa Claus, but even though I know Santa Claus isn't real, and even though if he was real, his punitive naughty nice list would be bad, I still like the cultural character of Santa Claus. That's what I mean when I say reappropriate the religion, because the Bible is super flawed. It's one of the worst books in history if you're trying to get morality from it. There's so much up so much messed up contradictory stuff. Yeah. But I think when people think of Jesus, they don't think of the Bible because most Christians just don't read the Bible extensively. So we can co-opt Jesus as this peaceful, loving person, which is what people think of when they think of him, even though if the Bible has contradictory stuff on that, and use him to push. Earlier we were talking about the homophobic guy in this call, the guy who makes YouTube videos or whatever. We could be like, no, Jesus loves everybody, even if they're different. That's what I'm saying. But I'm not advocating that because I'd rather live in a world with no religion, obviously.
Part of the
Go
problem
ahead.
with Jesus is you can find quotes to conjure whatever kind of Jesus you want. Is it a militant Jesus? Is it a right-wing Jesus? Is it the socialist Jesus? There's quotes all over the board for this. But the problem that I have with him is that, one, he's a faith healer. Faith healer equals fraud. He's a first century faith healer. He's pretending to cure diseases that he can't even cure all the time. Remember there was the one time where he couldn't get the blind guy to see, right? So that it doesn't always work. And when he complains that, the familiarity breeds contempt, and that he can't be what he called himself a physician in one translation. Well, you go to your own hometown where they know you and they don't take you seriously. You can't flim-flam these people. You got no appreciation where they know who the fuck you are. Aren't you Jesus? Didn't we grow up with you? Who are you pretending to be now? That kind of thing. So then he's a self-styled exorcist because he doesn't know what the causes, what the pathogens are that he's pretending to heal. He thinks diseases are caused by demons. So I need to get believers to understand it. Jesus believed in demons. This means that this is not the guy you want to take medical advice from.
Absolutely not. Jesus is like the world's first snake oil salesman. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say that I kind of feel like we've already got the kind of Jesus that you're talking about now. It's just that it's not preventing, it's not accomplishing exactly what you want it to accomplish because of the fact that so many people have different ideas about Jesus, that even if you start off with this more progressive Jesus, like you're, talking about here, people are still going to force their own ideas into Jesus and then portray it as being a religious idea that Jesus would support. I mean, hell, you've got people now that are putting up memes claiming that Jesus fucking Christ approves of Donald Trump. Like, how the
ridiculous.
Fuck do you know
Although there
that?
is a religious fervor around Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump is like he reminds me of the guy from the Music Man musical. You got trouble, my friend. That guy. He's like he's duping the whole town. He's duping everybody. He's like a cult of
Didn't
personality.
Jesus kind of hate rich people?
It is easier to go through.
That's my favorite Bible quote. Whenever I talk to a theist and I ask them their favorite Bible quote and they ask me mine, I always say it's easier for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter heaven, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. It's a great quote. That's what I mean. That type of stuff. God,
by the way, the translation on that quote, the translation when it says camel, it's not actually referring to like a dromedary animal, the great beast called a camel. It's actually the translation refers to a knot in a rope.
Mm.
Yeah, but it would be just as difficult.
Yeah,
it's to get that to go through. It's not quite as ridiculous as trying to get a camel to go through the eye of an evil. But if you're trying to sew or whatever, and you get this big knot in the thread, that's not going through. That's what it was referring to. It's a little known mistranslation.
I never knew that.
The Bible's full of mistranslations.
All the time. Constant things that are mistranslated. In between, I'm sure if I look through King James versus what's the newest one that they did? What is it?
I've been reading the New Revised Standard Updated Edition.
That one. Yeah. I'm sure there's so many inconsistencies between that and the original Greek and Hebrew. But that's the thing about the Bible is it literally, you could make it say anything you want to, because it's basically just a collection of poetry and like political letters with the case of Paul and, just stories. I think that we should corner the market on co-opting what Jesus wants so that all these people that believe in Jesus, at least maybe they're believing Jesus says trans rights instead of Jesus says Donald Trump should be the president or something.
Yeah. We do have another caller to get to, so we kind of need to wrap up here in just a second. But
don't worry about it.
That's I think that even now, like all throughout Christianity's religious history, really, what you have are people that are taking their own ideas and using religion in order to advance them. And I feel like if you try to use religion in order to convince people of more progressive things, I think that the same thing could happen. You could have people that insert their own ideas into it, change the religion, and then you're just right back where you started. So I feel like it would just perpetuate a vicious cycle of continuously lying to people and having a few of those amongst the population that can twist the religion into pushing their own ideas. I think you'll just continuously have that happening.
Yes. I completely agree with you, and I think that, I mean, it's possible. Like, I agree with you that it's possible. It wouldn't necessarily happen, but it probably would. I think that I would like to revise my question. Is there utility to co-opting religion instead of can we? Obviously, we can. We could do anything. It's so contradictory. You could have the Bible say that Jesus is an alien, and you probably wouldn't even be that contradictory. More, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. But
you could literally make up your own religion if it's a body of ethics, and you get a group of people to accept that. Yeah, these are the ethos we want to live by, and the government would call it a religion, even if there's no faith-based beliefs or doctrine or anything into any other religious aspect to it.
I wish I got to bring it up in this call, but Aron did an excellent video recently about the historical precedent of Jesus.
Historicity.
I don't know. Yeah, historicity. Jesus, I can't speak. Jesus. Anyway, excellent video. I just want to say I love that video, and I was hoping we were going to get into that more, but I don't want to take up all your time with the call, just because that has to do with Jesus. And, you know, obviously Jesus the man, if he did exist, is so removed from, there's so much stuff added on top and taken from other religions, you know, that if there's a person Jesus, that's a different topic, but go ahead.
Danny, I kind of feel like you're trying to pit both Aron and I against each other in that particular question, but maybe we can get to that a different time. Well, I feel like I probably have a contrary opinion than Aron does, considering the videos that I've seen from Aron about the topic. I feel like I probably have a contrary opinion on that particular topic, but. I don't expect you to know who. No. I don't expect you to know who I am.
I know that when I got to the end of that,
made me think of my question.
When I got to the end of that question, where I got to the end of that discussion, I remember that somebody was putting up a closing argument. Somebody who was a historicist put up the comment, or put up the statement that whether Jesus was an actual historical character is irrelevant. And this was a historicist saying this, because
I'm going on mute.
Yeah, Jesus is not referenced in like history the way you would expect a historical character to be. Certainly, if he was like King of the Jews, right? Well, there's no record of him being King of the Jews. There's no record of him like at all. Just period.
The biggest thing for me is the biggest thing for me is the baby thing.
There's reason to believe that Jesus is not an entirely mythical character, and I'll go there. Okay, but calling him a historical character is still a bit of a stretch, since he's not mentioned in history. Unless you want to take,
I think you said something,
a reference to James, brother of Jesus, which might refer to that Jesus. That's the best you got? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess that's where Aron and I would differ, because I would go the full 9 and say that he was completely mythological, in my opinion. So that's the very minor disagreement we both have.
Yeah, and it is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
My belief is that if there is a real person who existed named Jesus, he's so far removed from what he is, it's not even right to call that our Jesus. I think Aron brought this up in his video, but like if you pulled Robin Hood out this is exactly what you said, actually, so I'm not going to restate it. But you know what I mean. The historical figure has so much added onto them that they become a character. This is still in the time where history and fiction are like the same thing. Like there's a lot of intermingling. You know, this is before we really think of stories as separate from history. So,
well, I will say that I find the question to be important in the context of historical research, like into the origins of Christianity. For typical conversations that are being had like on the internet or between, you know, family members or anybody like that, or really for the most part, like I would agree that it's not an important topic in that aspect. I think that the question of his historicity and Christian origins in particular are really a very niche topic area that it really is only important in that particular niche and not really, you know, outside of that with, you know, bigger questions.
I agree.
All right. Thank you very much for being on. And we do have a couple more calls we have to jump to. We've been on this call for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
You two have a wonderful night. Thank you for taking me.
Yeah. See you later, Danny.
Adios.
All right. You want to jump to the next call straight away?
Yeah. Since we don't have any theist callers calling in, at least back in, it would be great if some people in the chat would nut up or shut up. But, you know, I guess we
oh, yeah. I know, right? Yeah, big and bold in the chat, but not so much on camera. Okay, so I'm gonna talk to Alvaro from Washington. Alvaro, can you hear us?
Hey guys. Yep.
How do you do?
How you doing, guys?
Good.
I'm doing great. Hey, so first of all, I want to apologize because I'm French, so my accent might get in the way.
How dare you be French?
Yeah, right. French guy who came in the US. I'm one of those immigrants who came to steal your job.
All right,
okay,
go ahead.
So, and I want to say first that Aron, big fan. I like your video about evolution. It helped me a lot to learn English, actually, to perfect my English. So that was nice. And your book about falsehood of creationism was very nice too. John, 7 years ago, I did a drawing of you. You were like looking for graphics for your channel, Godless Engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a caricature of you at this time. It was a long time.
Oh, okay. I probably have that on my computer. I know I have so few, I guess, artist renditions of me that I probably if I knew which one you did, I would definitely know which one it is.
Yeah. Anyway, so two topics. The first one was like about like the definition of atheism, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and how it evolved. Especially like, so I'm not a scholar or anything. I just I read that Romans were calling Christian atheists at the time, right? I don't know if you read that. And so like my point on this, and the point I want to
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to go with your second question there. As far as yeah, that's fine. As far as atheism's definition, I mean, there's a lot of ideas about the definition of atheism, and typically I don't like getting into those discussions just because there's a lot of heated discussion over it and everything like that. But for me personally, I would define atheism as just simply not believing in a God. And so people, you know, can use that in whatever way I guess they want to.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
And I agree with that, but like the thing is like my point was like more like about worship. You know?
Yeah, the definition of atheism. The definition of atheism rather than just atheist or atheos is slightly different than atheist or atheist. There were a couple of people in the 1700s who were the first people in history to identify as atheist, and both of them described their position as not believing in any God. And then there was Matthias Knudsen and Baron Richard Thierry, also known as Baron von Olbrock, I think it was. But both of them wrote books describing atheism as not believing in any God, and then both of them made up their own terms to describe people who also held a belief that there is no God. Both of these men distinguished themselves from people who had a positive belief that there is no God. So atheism for both of them was not believing in a God. And then a century or so later, you get Thomas Huxley. He's irritated with some people who were making pronouncements that he thinks are unjustified, given the information available. And so he comes up with agnostic, which he said meant that you can't say that you know things you can't show to be true. I completely adhere to that. But what that has been redefined, despite the fact that he was explicit in the definition, there are some philosophers who turned that to be that you can't know the nature of God. And that's assuming that there's a God that exists, right? But that doesn't speak to whether you believe there's a God or not. And so before Huxley came along, Webster's Dictionary, 1828, which was before Huxley, already defined atheism as not believing in any God, having a disbelief in God. And then some philosophers will say, well, in philosophy, disbelief means, yeah, but this is a dictionary, isn't it? So if we look up the definition for disbelief, the definition there says not being convinced of the truth of the claim, or some words to that effect. So before Huxley, atheism was defined as not believing in a God. After Huxley, all of the atheist organizations, every last one of them, hold to the definition that the larger body of atheism, the larger body of atheists, means not having a belief in God. Within that, there's a subset, and I'm in that subset, of people who not only don't have a belief in a God, but who also have a belief that no God exists. So I would be in the category of what they call strong or explicit atheists. And Anthony Flew and a handful of other philosophers of the 20th century agreed that that's the way that should be interpreted.
All right. My view on
it comes
that
down
is
to this.
Because of the language.
It comes down to this. Do you have a belief in God? If the answer is yes, no, you're a theist. If the answer is no, you're an atheist. It's that simple.
Okay. So the thing is, because of the language, the French language, and because also, we brought back the world to fashion in the 17th century. For us, atheism is not worshipping. So, when you say, you can say you're atheist in matter of, and not practicing, so you can say you're atheist in matter of mechanics. In the language, we use that. We say, je suis athée en matière de mécanique. So
I don't know how this would translate to French, but I mean, in English, atheism simply means without theism. So theism is a religious belief in a God, and atheism is not that. Did we lose you, Alvaro?
Sorry, guys. When the stuff go to sleep, can you stop it? When my phone go to sleep, it cuts the line. So the stuff was when there's a difference between a deist and a theist, right? And the theist is worshipping. Both of them believe in God, in a God. One of them thinks it's just a god that did nothing, the deist, and the other is like having a relationship with him and worshiping the god. But
Yeah, another subtle difference is that the deist doesn't believe that God is present or personal. That the deistic God maybe created the universe, started things along, and then removed himself from the equation, so that Spinoza and Einstein and
so like
them
that's
would
why
say
like
God doesn't
that's why I
answer
think,
prayers.
Like, and that's why I think like atheism is more about like not worshipping, and therefore like everybody who's not worshipping should be defined as atheist. But okay, so that was just
I kind of look at it a little bit differently, because I see faith as make believe, and I'm not a pretender.
I know you're not, but like there's like different degree in everything. So like you say, you're a strong atheist, and I am too. I don't think there is a God. And at least if I don't think there is a God, I would say like I'm convinced that the Abrahamic God is not real because of the definition and the qualificatives that are attributed to it.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Yeah. Sorry, I cut again.
And for me, historically also, we've had sovereign leaders and members of the clergy and so forth that people in power have been way too interested in the question, do you believe in a God? Not necessarily do you worship a God. Not even whether you're a good person, but do you believe in a God? Yes or no? And so if the answer is yes, then all can be forgiven. I'm sorry?
Historically, the way you worshipped a God was like a very big thing. Like, we killed a bunch of Protestants, like in Europe, like because they didn't worship the way we wanted them to worship. We killed a bunch of Cathars.
I'm confused about that, because if there was a God, if I believed there was a God, I wouldn't worship it. I mean, because to my mind, any being worthy of worship would not want to be worshipped.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard you make this argument before, and I totally agree with it. Anyway, so that was one thing, like the way, like I think, like atheism, and like all these people try to distance themselves from atheism because they got called shit in justifying stuff. Like, I think they should not distance themselves, because as long as you're not worshiping a god, to me, you're an atheist. Anyway, so that was one thing. The second topic I wanted to talk about was John's opinion about Greg Locke, who recently decided that, because I know, John, you interviewed, or you had like a discussion with Greg Locke.
I haven't interviewed Greg Locke, but I have attended back when he was more of a general preacher.
He had a few marbles left when you talked to him. So like apparently, like lately he decided that he was an apostle now. Yeah, and I wanted to have your opinion about that.
Okay. So for anybody that doesn't know, like a while ago, like 2016, 2017 kind of time frame, I had I could actually message Greg Locke. He was a lot smaller as far as I guess less popular than he is now. Still rather big, but like I could have personally messaged him, and I had on a couple of occasions. So there was actually this one.
A few years.
Oh, it definitely is. When it comes to this, I'm not as
from the stuff like for a while, so that's why like I'm outdated with the question, I guess, but I kind of like disappeared from the radar of the atheist discussions in 2017 when I moved to America, because I've been told by my immigration officer that I should be discreet.
Okay. Well, so as far as Pastor Greg Locke goes, obviously he's fallen way off the wagon, and I think that he was pretty off the rails beforehand, but he's even more so now. I think that if we look at biblically what it means to be an apostle, that means to get a vision of Jesus, and get some kind of religious instruction from him personally through a vision. If that is what Greg Locke is talking about, I feel like he's just par for the course with how delusional he's been. I think that Greg has definitely succumbed to what will get him popular and noticed. I feel like he's a lot like the kid in the class that does a lot of things for shock value just so that he can get attention. Whether that's because he wasn't getting enough attention before, or maybe whatever reason that he feels like he needs more and more attention. I feel like whatever Greg can do to get more and more attention on him, he's going to do it. And so that's why, I don't know how many people really followed the whole Greg Locke thing when he first started getting noticed, but like he would sit out in front of high schools and claim that they shouldn't be teaching about Islam in high schools, when really the curriculum was just teaching about the pillars of Islam as a historical aspect to history classes and stuff. Like it was just purely factually based about the religion in the area and everything like that. And he had a problem with it. And then he also had problems with he probably had a problem with Starbucks. He just latched on to whatever kind of cultural popularity thing he could latch onto and just insert his shitty fucking foot into the situation. And so that's kind of where he got really popular at. And I feel like it just sort of was all downhill from there, because once you start chasing that and you start doing
with Maga, I guess.
Yeah, once you start doing that and you just start chasing it to get bigger and bigger and bigger, I mean, you just gotta keep one-upping. You gotta keep going, farther and farther and farther. And so now he's this like ultra right-wing pastor who's like mixing religion and politics and everything like that. He's pushing anti-vax stuff. So figuring that he's an apostle now just seems to be par for the course. Like this is just part of that snowball getting bigger.
All right. Cool. I just wanted to know what you thought about it, because like you had the occasion to talk to the guy. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
All right.
I think that's all for me, guys. Thank you.
Yep. Our pleasure. We'll go ahead and drop the call, Alvaro. Thank you, by the way, for apologizing for being French. Now I want you to go to your room and think about what you
I get that a lot. I get like a lot of like, oh, you should thank us for freeing freeing friends from Nigeria. I'm like, yeah, right. Because you were.
But before we let you go, I want to let French people know that I appreciate your fries and your method of kissing. So.
Okay, so the fries are not ours, and and the method of kissing.
It's a joke.
We'll talk about it later if we make. Okay, guys, you have a great day.
You too.
Good night.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, I knew it was a bit of a risk telling that joke, but oh well. Okay. So and all of that, you're French. Go think about what you've done. That's all of that was a bit of a risk, but I thought it would. All right. So now we are going to be talking to Josh in California. Josh, what's on your mind?
Hi. Hey, big fan of your show. I've been listening for, I want to say, 2 years now. I think it's been. So I'll get straight to it. So I was religious for, I want to say, a little over 10 years. I wasn't raised on it, but I kind of found it with some friends, and then left 2 years ago after finishing the Bible, as you would. Been watching your videos, atheist experience, etc. And it really has been helping me a lot. I figured follow the same process I did reading the Bible, but do the opposite now. Just binge atheist videos, binge videos that disprove the Bible, Christianity, and it really has helped so far. But if I go too long without, some of that stuff kind of seeps back in. So I figured this is kind of part of the process, but I wanted to ask you guys if you had any other additional recommendations for, because I want to be able to reach a sound mind, leaving the faith, leaving Christianity as an atheist, without any of that stuff coming back in, just that
How long has
anxiety.
it been?
Oh, a little over 2 years.
All right, let
Yeah,
me fill you in on something. I was not heavily indoctrinated, so it was relatively easy for me. My wife, however, had like two different Catholic family and a Protestant family, both heavily religious, like abusive, oppressive kind of religious. And they were both telling her that either side of the father, either side of the family is the other side of the family is going to go to hell, you know. And they're so adamant in what they're teaching her. When she began to question her faith, when she started, because truth mattered to her, and she wanted to understand the way things really are, just not just make believe what she wants to believe, but to understand what's the truth here. And when you find conflicts between denominations, that's a good way to realize that, hey, both of you are telling me opposite things, and you're both telling me it's the absolute truth. Either one of you are wrong or both of you are wrong.
Right.
And that's an important thing to notice. But the problem that my wife had, being deeply indoctrinated, was that it took her, I want to say, probably 6 years before she stopped having nightmares about religious indoctrination.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that on some of your past shows too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think there's anything that covers this more than time. And 2 years, 2 years, you're starting to get into a safe place. I've spoken to a lot of people doing shows like this. I've spoken to a number of people who realized they no longer believed 6 or 8 months ago. And I'm thinking, wow, you're still in a place where that's raw. You've just ripped the scab off, and that's where you're still at. But you're in a much better place. So whatever discomfort you feel now, it's probably not going to be as bad as what my wife went through. It's not going to last as long as what she went through. Probably, I would hope.
Yeah, because my understanding was from seeing your videos, you were introduced to it when you were around 8, correct? Like officially?
Yeah. My family didn't indoctrinate me like from birth, like a lot of other people did. My family didn't bother teaching me anything about their faith until I was already 8 years old. I was in second grade. I already knew about dinosaurs. I had already seen cladograms, dendrograms. I knew about evolution. I understood evolution. So when on my 8th birthday, my mother comes in and hands me a Bible and demands that I read it because it's the absolute truth and the revealed word of the one true God and all that shit, I come back to her 2 or 3 hours later after reading Genesis, and I'm like, no, it isn't. Look what it says here. Because there's no other way I can interpret that. You know?
Right.
What happens when you there's an old Jesuit saying that you give me a child until they are 7 and I will show you the man. And the religious people will tell us that, well, why can't we teach both sides? But what they really want to do is indoctrinate the children entirely in religion, and so that they don't even begin to understand what reality is until they got to college.
Exactly.
But what happens? What happens when the student is taught reality first, and then you're 20 years old and you learn about magically enchanted fruit and talking snakes?
Yeah, because once you introduce basic logic, it's a lot more beneficial to their development, things like that. And
Now, wouldn't
yeah,
it be great if
luckily,
we taught that in high school? Can you imagine if we taught philosophy, if we taught logic in high school?
yeah, I mean, and luckily I wasn't raised in it either. I was in my teens and then was hanging around a bunch of friends who happened to be religious, and so I was only in the church for about 10, 12 years, and then left 2 years ago after, like I said, finishing the Bible and seeing everything that it sanctioned. And I left after that. So, and I kind of figured as much, that it's only a matter of time. I don't think there's any way that I can just flick my fingers and be completely done with it. I think I have to give it time, but that it will eventually just get out of my system.
It's a lot like giving up smoking, I think. I mean, it took me
Okay.
when I had to give up smoking, I had to go like a month without a cigarette before I could begin to realize the kind of poison that I was putting into my body. And so a bit of distance will help.
So like
Um,
a period without any religious content, or am I being too literal?
Um, I don't know how to phrase this any other way than the analogy I just made. John, can you help?
Oh, well, I mean, I was, I'm not exactly sure about that. Do you mind if I offer you my perspective on your original question of, what to do when, I guess those sort of intrusive thoughts of religious indoctrination kind of come back in and make you question, your position. That was your, where we kind of started off with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
I completely.
So I've a while ago I was diagnosed with clinical depression, and I had to go to a lot of therapy. I kind of mentioned therapy a little bit earlier, and one of the things that my therapist taught me as far as like my clinical depression goes is to is whenever I'm feeling like I'm spiraling, or like these negative intrusive thoughts are coming in, to really focus on everything that I know to be true, or things that I positive things that I think about myself, and other things of that nature. And I think that kind of utilizing that model a little bit might help you overcome what you're doing, except instead of focusing on positive or good aspects about yourself so that you can stop spiraling, I would focus on like evidence and the arguments that are that religious normally religious arguments rely on, or the evidence that religious arguments rely on. So like if you have some doubt as to whether or not God exists, or anything of that nature, or whether you might be going to hell, what I might do is I might reinforce the questioning phase of stuff. Is like, well, okay, why do I feel like this? Why do I think that I might be going to hell? What evidence is there that hell even exists? What evidence is there that this particular definition of God exists? Why do people say that he does exist? And like asking those kinds of things, and sort of going on this sort of intellectual investigation, just while you're having these thoughts, and realizing, at least for me, I know that I would realize, well, the claims about this God are all speculative. They're ad hoc claims. There's no real solid evidence to say that, oh well, this God definitely exists. And then once you start thinking about like maybe thoughts of hell or fear of hell, I would think, well, what are the criteria for going to hell? Whatever you can come up with there, and realizing that there's so many different criteria for hell, you just simply don't know which one's right. And then it becomes a question of, well, what if this religion's wrong about hell, but this other religion's right about hell? Because there's multiple religions out there with hell ideas. Like how do I know which one's right? And really kind of logically thinking these things out. I feel like if you do that in the moment that you're having these doubts and everything like that, and that you're having these issues, I feel like at least I know from my personal experience, those particular situations will lessen over time. Like as time goes on and you start reinforcing, the more logical and intellectual arguments against those ideas, you can get to a point where you're not sitting there being like, oh yeah, or sorry, I don't mean to make it sound so easily done, but like, you're not sitting there on a constant basis thinking about, well, what if I go to hell? You're more or less thinking, why do people think they're going to go to hell? And you start sort of changing your mindset on that. And I mean, I'm not trying to say that you should maybe self-indoctrinate or anything like that. I just see religious people being like, he's trying to tell him to indoctrinate himself. I'm just saying that, like, reinforcing what brought you to your current position now and seeing if it still makes sense to you now, like reevaluating your beliefs. I feel like, that can help alleviate, these fears or whatnot, these issues that you have. It'll help alleviate those eventually. And whether or not that means that you're still an atheist or you become a theist or whatever, I feel like, being able to resolve those internal conflicts in whatever way, I feel like this kind of method can really help that.
No,
Does that make sense?
And, yeah, and I kind of figured as much as well, where, okay, I spent this much time reading the Bible and attending sermons. I should do, now that I'm an atheist, I should do that, but with atheist videos now. Occupy my time doing the opposite and watch videos that disprove the Bible, talk about evolution. I mean, it has helped so far, and I kind of figured as much. So, yeah, it was.
Yeah. I have to tell you just a quick anecdote. When I was a kid, I was never a creationist. I always understood evolution. I was the only person I knew until I was 14. I was the only person I knew who knew what evolution was, much less accepted it. I was never a creationist. I always understood and accepted evolution, even though I was entirely alone. But I did believe that there was a global flood because everybody told me there was a global flood. And everybody told me that there's all this evidence of a global flood. And I'm a fucking child. So how am I going to argue against everybody I've ever loved or respected? And it took someone being brutally blunt with me. When I mentioned something about the global flood to a middle school teacher who laughed in my face, fortunately in an empty classroom where it's just him and me, there wasn't a whole bunch of other people around. And he just told me bluntly and brutally, there was no global flood. It's absolutely impossible. It was the first time I'd ever heard that. The reason that that's important is because hell is inconsistent with God. If there was a God, there would be no reason for the God to create hell. It's logically inconsistent. That God understands what eternity is, and that God is going to judge you for this finite moment, this blink of an eye in which you exist, and that he's going to torture you mercilessly forever and ever, brutally, mercilessly, the most extreme way anybody ever could torture you, in an impossibly torturous way, mercilessly, for absolutely all eternity. Completely off the charts in all of the exaggerations and however bad it could be. Over what? Not whether you were good or bad. Did you believe the bullshit that was being sold to you by the clergyman for no fucking reason? If there really was a God, God would not allow there to be a hell. Hell is the construct of the clergyman because they have no better, because they tried to sell heaven, and when they just bring up heaven, that you won't really die, you'll go to this posthumous paradise or whatever. People start thinking about that, and it doesn't take long before you realize that being dead in a grave is actually better than spending an eternity in heaven. So they invented hell to stop people from thinking about the logical problems with heaven. Because you can think all day about hell and it just keeps getting worse, right? If you take away hell, heaven starts to get worse and people start wanting to just die. And that was me. I actually prayed when I was 13 or so. I prayed to
Mhm.
God, can't I just die and be dead forever, body and soul? That because that's like we're supposed to, like all the other animals do. I mean, that's what I think it should be. So I just want to be brutally blunt with you. There is no hell. There's no afterlife of
Right.
any kind. We don't have souls. Now you can tell me that I can't logically prove that there's no God, and fine, maybe I can't. But there's no evidence for a soul. We have evidence against souls. And even if we had a soul, there still wouldn't be a heaven because there still wouldn't be a hell because hell is inconsistent with God. And any God that would allow there to be a hell is not a God I want to be near in the first place.
No, yeah, me neither. I completely meet your logic as well because, for one thing, given the nature of the universe and the way it works, there's no room for God because of the way his nature and everything is described in the Bible. Logically, there's no room for it nor necessity for it. But even if he did exist, given his nature in the Bible, I would rather go to hell than spend eternity in heaven with someone like that. And I'd flip him
Yeah.
off at the pearly gates before walking myself to the gates of hell because he's a dick.
I have to applaud that because that was also a prayer that I included when I was a little kid. That if God needed to explain himself, that when I was told that if you read the Bible that God is wisdom and God is love, and if I read the Bible, then I'm going to tap into the mind of the ultimate consciousness, the ultimate wisdom, the ultimate love, and beneficial everything. And you don't get 2 pages into that book before you realize this was written by ignorant primitives who obviously had no idea what the fuck they were talking about. So everything God does in basically the entirety of the Old Testament is some fucked up shit that no being worthy of worship would ever do. God is such a criminal in this that even though I believed in God still as a child, as a preteen, I'm praying to God that he better God, you got some splaining to do. Either the Bible got you wrong and you need to explain how the Bible got you wrong, or you got to explain some kind of justification for the ignorant, stupid judgments you're making, because you're not a righteous judge. God in the Old Testament is fucking evil. So that was my ultimatum. And I said, and I told God in my prayer, which, by the way, just like I think is it Matthew 6? I prayed in the privacy of my own room, not out like the hypocrites did. But the thing is, I believe that prayer was answered because the first thing I needed God to tell me was, one, that the Bible got him all wrong. And I've seen nothing but evidence for the rest of my life that the people who wrote the Bible had no idea what the fuck they were talking about. That's not God's word, and they got everything wrong.
Yeah, because I had physically exhausted myself coming up with excuses for defending the Bible, but yeah, once I became an atheist, and I for the most part I'm of sound mind about that. It Everything else makes so much sense when I watch biology videos and evolution, things like that. The Bible takes more suspension of disbelief. It takes more effort and physical mental strain to believe any of it. But evolution and science, biology, everything, that makes more sense, and I don't have to put any physical effort into taking their word for it. So
you can test it independently, and you don't have to believe it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's only one. You test it, and there's going to be one result. There's not going to be like 12 different interpretations of it.
Have we adequately addressed your question?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to ask that quick thing. I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but yeah, I just wanted to make sure that if there were any other additional tips or anything you wanted to give me. But yeah, I'm all set. So I want to thank you guys for your time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's not like I have to hurry you off the line because all the people that want to challenge us to do battle have yet again failed to come forth when the opportunity presented itself. Funny how that works, isn't it, John?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how big a game they talk either in comment sections or in the live chat itself. But yeah, they just don't want to. They don't want to bother actually backing up their bullshit statements.
Let me, before we drop Josh, because he can be in the conversation too, since we don't have any other callers at the moment. There was somebody in the chat you wanted to respond to. What was it?
Well, let's see. There was this one. I don't even recall now. It was this John Doe guy, and I just I said, that'd be an interesting thing for you to call in about there, John. I'll have to see if I can go back and I can look through it. It was something.
I remember mine.
Okay,
I remember mine where somebody said that woke has evolved into something different, and
yeah.
So I put in the request. Go ahead. Let's talk about that. Tell me what woke is. And I knew that we're not going to get that call. And I think the person who said that also knew, yeah, I'm full of shit and they're going to expose me in a hot second if I call it. So I'm not going to do that.
I think it was the same commenter because he's been complaining about the woke stuff the entire time, I believe.
Yeah, I will just not get that. I mean, why pick on the marginalized people? What the hell is the problem with? How is compassion bad? Mm-hmm. And I got the definition from, of all places, the Ron DeSantis. You know how Ron DeSantis always constantly complained about wokeism, right? That was the worst thing ever. Mm-hmm. I found an accurate definition of woke on his campaign website. And it's correct. So I'm like, so you know what it is, and you know that it means that you're watching out for other people's rights, not just your own. That you want to be compassionate about like the whole collective of people and fair to everybody, and that doesn't mean, equal outcomes or whatever. There's a lot of people there's a lot of ways that people can misrepresent that. We're just saying that we understand that certain demographics are going to have a bit more difficulty than some other demographics. Okay, and there's not a lot that we have to do. It's not like we have to bend over backwards to cater to these people. We can pretty much just acknowledge that this disparity exists, and really just being aware of it. That's just not even taking action, just being aware that it exists is what woke is, right? Isn't that all it is?
Pretty much.
And yet people get so bent out of shape. No, I'm not going to consider somebody else's rights. What the fuck would I do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm done.
So, I mean, I believe the same person had said something about IVF being of the devil or from the devil or something like that. And that's been a news talking point of the religious right, being against IVF. Well, I mean, it's an old position to have, but I mean, they're starting to really be out and about it because of what happened in my state, Alabama. I don't understand it when people say, and I don't know if I suspect Aron probably feels the same way as me. I'm always thoroughly confused when people are like, the devil did this, or this is the result of the devil. Because it's like, how do you know that? How do you know it's the devil? What if it's actually God? God seems pretty fond of aborting people. Like, even if it's the majority of the planet, like he's perfectly fine aborting them. Also, half of all pregnancies end in a miscarriage. It seems like he's one of the most prolific abortionists out there. I don't see why God would have a problem with either abortion or IVF, which the religious have a problem with IVF because you have to, inseminate a few embryos in order to, get one to take or whatnot in the pregnant person.
Are we going to argue? Are we going to argue the efficiency of the human reproductive system? How many sperm are lost? How many eggs are wasted?
I mean, you know, swallowing a load is just cannibalism at this point to these people. So, you know, that's a whole lot of cannibalism.
How many eggs does a woman produce over the course of her lifetime, and how many of them are actually, how many of them become people?
Right.
I mean, let's talk about.
I mean, comparatively, very few.
Inefficiency.
Right. Oh, and all of it is because no, that's fine. And it's all because a woman had a fruit salad one time. Like God said, don't have a fruit salad. And she's like, but it looks tasty. I'm going to eat it. and God was like, oh, fuck it. I said, don't have the fruit salad. Therefore, you have to endure horrible childbirth, you know, horrible pains during childbirth, and also once every month, regardless.
And
what amazes me about that is that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, she wasn't allowed to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but the thing is, she didn't know any better before.
Right.
So,
now, there is an interpretation. I don't know that it's consistent across all translations, but there is an interpretation that Eve ate of the fruit and then, with the knowledge of good and evil, decided that it was a good thing to give it to Adam.
Well, I mean, you know, I feel like this is, and I guess going to the heart of like one of the tenets of both of any Abrahamic religion is this very anti-intellectual kind of position. I feel like it has, because at the very beginning of the Bible, you know, one of the first lessons that's taught, other than the bullshit about how the universe was created, is to not seek knowledge, that knowledge is a curse basically upon the human race. And that's regurgitated like throughout the Bible. If you look at several, you know, different passages, you have affirmations of not trusting your own intellect and instead, you know, seeking God's intellect, just doing what God tells you to do, you know, like you're a good little robot kind of thing, and just accepting it. And that's one of the big things. Like after I came out of religion and I started really considering like the tenets of Christianity, tenets of the Bible that aren't normally like highlighted like in the church, it's like it's very anti-intellectual, like it's anti-knowledge in a sense, because the only knowledge that seems worthy of knowing is this knowledge of God, or the knowledge that God gives us. And obviously people can twist this in different ways in order to affirm their search for knowledge. Plenty of Catholic priests in the past have done that, as well as other horrible things. But you know, they twist that kind of logic into being able to do this intellectual search into nature. But at the same time, it's very obvious that the original either Christians or followers of the Abrahamic faith, they were pretty much just like, well, God said it, therefore I'm doing it. And like, that was it. And it was very much shunned to like think outside of the box in that kind of way.
I want to call attention to a comment that I just saw that was chiming in on something you said. Crafty said, swallowing a load is cannibalism at this point. Wow, I'm way more atheist than I thought. I've eaten millions of babies.
Yeah. That's what I'm here for, the penis jokes. That's all that I'm good for. Just saying.
Yeah. So, yeah,
I mean,
one of the arguments that bothers me about why people cling to religion is that they have this belief in morality. If I could just talk about that for a second. I know nobody brought it up, but it comes up a lot, even if it didn't come up today. That they think that you can't be moral without God because you need the threat of someone punishing you. They need the threat of somebody watching what you're doing who's going to punish you for what you do. But then if you look at our prisons, they're chock-a-block full of people who think that God watches everything they do and was perfectly fine with what they did. That they did it anyway. And if they get executed, it's because God understands why they did that. And that if they get executed, then they don't have to serve out their sentence. And that as soon as they get executed, they will be at the right hand of God, who fully understands why that motherfucker deserved what he got in the first place.
And it's actually, from what I've heard from a lot of Protestants and Catholics out there, it's a selling point. Like, that's a selling point of the religion. They always say no sin is too big for Jesus to handle or whatever in the fuck. And, that just says to me that whoever is saying that, they just don't think that your works have any kind of bearing on whether or not you get into heaven, which is one particular way to view the religion. It's a very particular view of, that your works don't necessarily get you into heaven. Like, you can't do good works and still get into heaven. You also have to believe in God. Although the Catholics are a little different. That's why you really got to know what each denomination kind of believes, or at least major splits in Christianity, because like Catholics believe you got to do both good works and have faith in order to get into heaven. And there are some Protestants that believe that too. And, but there's a growing number of Protestants out there that are faith only. Like they feel like, if you believe in Jesus, you're getting into heaven, which ultimately means that, the preacher down the street that molests 12 kids in the neighborhood, he gets into heaven because he prayed to Jesus. He believes in Jesus. He sucks that Jesus dick nightly, and he still gets in because, that's the price to get in, sucking Jesus dick. And that's it.
Yeah, I'd rather go. No, for real. No.
I think we might be losing you there. Are you still there? Okay.
I left him speechless.
Well, for all the people that want to call us out, I wanted to address the one question when somebody asked earlier that was a theist that was in the call queue, who unfortunately dropped off. I couldn't get her on the phone fast enough. Said, "How is it that you do not believe in God?"
Mm-hmm.
And the simple answer is, how could I?
Well, and especially considering, I believe the call was coming from the USA, at least. That's probably more than likely going to be the Christian version of God, and I don't understand why people believe in that God, personally, because I feel like, I always classify myself as an agnostic atheist because, I don't know whether or not a God exists, but I don't believe in one. But the nuance to my position is that I definitely believe that the Christian God or Abrahamic God in general definitely doesn't exist. That I will make that positive claim from till I die. But it's because it's so logically inconsistent. And after coming out of the religion, I don't know why people would believe in it other than just indoctrination. I know when I was religious, I believed in God just because I was told that God exists, like as a fact of reality. And once I questioned that, like I started down the road of questioning, well, what actually proves that God exists? Like that just had never dawned on me before. Like, well, what evidence is there? Like, not does God exist, because automatically I was like, sure, God exists. Why wouldn't he? I changed my thought process on it, and I was just like, well, what evidence do we have that he exists? And that's when shit started to fall apart for me, is focusing on the evidence that suggests that he exists, and it's really poor.
I've heard a lot of people quote this, some Nazi, whether it was, sometimes it's Hitler, sometimes it's Goebbels, whatever, but it's the quote about telling the big lie and telling it often enough that people will believe it. The version of that I prefer is when Charles Manson put it in his own words. So I was reading Vincent Bugliosi's Helter Skelter, and Manson paraphrased that quote, where he was explaining that if it's all that people hear, they may not believe it completely, but if it's all that they know, they'll have to source it because it is all that they know, right? They don't know any better, so they've been given this misinformation forever. Now, he didn't put it as eloquently as I just did. I can't remember the exact way that he phrased it, but I liked the way that Manson paraphrased that, because you know that you're still telling a lie, and you're doing that just to manipulate people, and it is a means of controlling the information and censoring the information so that they only get the perspective that you're pipe feeding them, and not anything contrary to that they may have to consider. But that still leaves you with the admission that you know that you're deceiving them. And that's the huge issue that I have with theism. So many believers know that what they're saying is not really true. And we can show, in many cases, when I'm arguing with creationists and such, we can show that, you know that this particular thing you just said is not factually true. You know it's indefensible. And that's why you're ducking out right now.
Well, Josh, do you have any final thoughts of anything that we've covered so far about what we've been talking about?
No, I think I'm all set. I just wanted to ask that one quick thing and just get a few thoughts out of my head, and because for the most part, I pretty much have sound mind about the whole thing, but just wanted to take in any additional thoughts and sort of toss around a few ideas or suggestions. But I'm all set. If you had any other callers, I don't want to hold up the hold you guys up any longer.
No, I do believe we're going to be capping calls because we're right here at the end of the show, and I do believe that there's still a podcast preview that's on after this. So, but I think we're going to be capping the calls here as soon as we get you off of the line. But I will say that I hope that you can call back in the future and maybe give us specific things that that cause you to question whatever position that you're in now, whether that's believing in God or not, anything that's causing you trouble, or you don't know how to respond or answer or how to explain something. I hope that maybe in the future you can call in and give us an example, something that we can work with from a more theistic point of view that other atheists might also be having a tough time with. But I really appreciated your call tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you. And I'll be sure to tune in and call when I have time.
Okay, awesome, Josh. Well, you have a great night there, bud, and a great week coming up.
All right, you too. Thank you, guys.
No problem. Bye, Josh.
I'll tell you one thing that's bugging me of late. We mentioned the Project 2025 thing earlier at the beginning of the show. I remember trying to share with my mother, who's now in a nursing home, and she wanted me to drive her out so that she can vote. And I'm like, okay, well, you just want to negate my vote so that you can support the axis of evil, and so that my vote doesn't mean anything. And I tried to explain to her about the Project 2025 thing, and that Trump had signed on to it, where neither of the Bushes nor Reagan had endorsed this thing, because they all realized how un-American it is. And when I try to explain this to her, my mom wants to put down that, well, it's the Bidens that are the crime family. I think the Trump family business being found guilty of fraud, all of the businesses, even the charity, and all of the children now, the whole family is banned from doing business in New York, can't be associated with a charity. I think that's what qualifies as a crime family. I think having one crackhead son who's not in an office of political power doesn't quite qualify as the same thing. Just being fair. But I said, oh, look, let me. She would say things all the time that she can't verify to be true. If I ask her to show me the truth of that, she says, I have no idea how to show you that that's true. Well, then why are you saying that it is? If I tell you something's true, I can show you it's fucking true. And so I come up with an example where she says, "Oh, I'm putting words in these people's mouth, and that's not really what they're doing." I'm like, "Okay, here's a Senate hearing where Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett is interviewing one of the authors of 2025 and getting him to admit in Congress on video in public record that this is what they're actually doing." The video lasts 3 minutes. And the important part, if you want to, I can just jump to halfway through the video because the important part is the second half of the video. And that way you don't have, short attention span theater. We can even accommodate that. My mother refuses to see it because she doesn't want to know. She has a set thing that she wants to believe, that she's been told to believe, that she's allowed to believe. And then she doesn't want to believe what she's prohibited to believe. I have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I don't want to know.
Yeah, that's definitely a disheartening sentiment to hear. The dog has strong opinions about it too. Me personally, I really dislike the religious logic too of, basically thought stopping, which I feel like is a lot of the religious argumentation. I recently responded to this friar that does that Breaking in the Habit channel here on YouTube, and
is that the guy who dresses like Robin Hood days?
Yeah, I call him Friar Tuck. He basically has a video out where he's like, stop being open-minded, where he makes an argument for why it's bad to be open-minded and how you need to close your mind at some point. And it's basically an entire video about how you need to stop thinking at some point. Like at some point you just have to stop thinking about things and just believe in your position. And I guess he said you need to be dogmatic about it. So he's making an argument for being dogmatic about God, but yet he also expects atheists to not be dogmatic and to remain open to the possibility of God. It's a really kind of weird video, but I definitely agree that the thought stopping techniques used in religion are quite bad, and disheartening in general.
I'll be open to the possibility of God when you show me that there is a possibility to consider.
Yeah, I agree. If you could demonstrate that would be awesome, and I would definitely consider it. Just to let everybody know, we do have a lot of shows coming up this week. So tomorrow I'm going to be on Skeptalk with Erika and well, of course myself. Sorry, I'm just reading through the list here. Tuesday at 6 p.m. we've got Chewed Gum with Arden and Alyssa. Then on Wednesday, we've got The Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty and Arden. And then we've got TACIS at 2 p.m. on Thursday with Alexander and Dr. Ben. And then next Sunday's lineup's pretty good. We've got Jimmy Snow and Erika for the first Sunday show. And then Paulogia and a surprise guest, I guess. It's a guest spot to be determined later for After Dark at 7 p.m. So we've got a lot of great stuff coming up. And we hope that y'all will tune in then. We do have the podcast, I believe. Maybe Morgan can let me know if I'm getting that wrong. I believe that there's okay. I'm not wrong, or there is no podcast preview. Oh, there isn't a preview. I'm so sorry. But if you want to go to patreon.com/call the line, I do believe that there are podcasts that are available over there if we don't have a new one this week. But these podcasts feature Jimmy calling a host and asking them random questions where patrons of the channel, like over there on Patreon, can win prizes and everything like that. So definitely check all of that out. And if you want to help support the show in any kind of way, Patreon memberships or the super chats, which I know we're here at the end of the show, but tomorrow night on Skeptalk, I'll be there and we will definitely go over your super chats. So super chatting helps us out here too. So I think that's all that we've got for tonight. Art, do you have any final thoughts about anything?
I envy you doing a show with Erika. Her and I
Yeah.
have so much to nerd out about, and on the same topic and everything. So I love when I can do a show with her. Why didn't I get to do the show tomorrow?
I mean, I'm envious too. Like, I'm so glad that I'm able to do the show. So, I mean, I'm stoked about it. So, but yeah, so we'll see you guys tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Central, whatever other time frame you want to put that in. And I guess we'll see you heathens then. Oh yeah. So we got Morgan as the producer. We got Stephanie that was the call screener, and we got all of our mods in the chat right now. You guys are awesome, all of y'all. That's great. Thank you to all the Patreon supporters too.
Live long and perspire.